What's going on, guys? Today we're taking a look at this motherboard right here. This is the Gigabyte Z790 AORUS Elite X WIFI7. So let's go ahead and take a look. This motherboard, as well as a handful of others, are launching in conjunction with Intel's 14th generation core processors. Now, these sort of new X series motherboards from Gigabyte bring with them a bunch of sort of new features that really help with user experience and things like that. Now, we have an entire dedicated video on the new boards and some of their features, so I'll go ahead and link that below. As we take a first look at the board here, we can see that it has this sort of black and silver kind of design. I always feel like AORUS boards have this really sort of, sleek and sophisticated design, and this board is no exception to that. Now, if you're wondering as far as size goes, this is a standard ATX motherboard. Starting at the CPU socket, we have Intel's LGA 1700 socket, which will support 12th, 13th, and 14th generation Intel Core processors. It's worth noting that the end of the release lever for the CPU socket has been flattened. This actually makes it easier to access and your finger doesn't slide off of it. Surrounding the CPU socket, we have our power delivery components. Here we have a 16+1+2 twin digital power phase design. So for the CPU, we have 8+8 phases in a parallel power design. The power stages here are 90 amps, so you'll have a total of 1440 amps available for the CPU. Covering the power delivery components are two large heat sinks. These heat sinks feature an embedded 8mm heat pipe which connects them. The top part of the larger heatsink acts as a rear I/O cover and really brings the top half of the board together. Hiding in the top corner of the board are your two 8-pin EPS connectors. Moving across the top of the board, we have a 4-pin optional CPU fan header, your main CPU fan header, and a 3-pin addressable RGB header. When it comes to the memory slots, we have 4 DDR5 slots which support DDR5 memory up to 8266 megahertz. Along the edge of the board, you'll find your 24-pin ATX power connection, a USB 3.2 header, USB 3.2 Gen 2 header, postcode LED array, Thunderbolt headers for an add-in card, a clear CMOS button, and 6 SATA 6 gig ports which are at a 90-degree angle. At the bottom of the board, you'll find the rest of your connections and buttons. From left to right, you have your HD audio header, 2 3-pin addressable RGB headers, a 4-pin standard RGB header, TPM header, 2 USB 2.0 headers, a Q flash button, 4 4-pin fan headers, your front panel headers, and a reset button. The bottom half of this motherboard, like most these days, is characterized by heat sinks. The larger heatsink has the AORUS logo on it, while the other one is just plain black. Removing these heat sinks, we can see that we have 4 M.2 slots. These are all Gen 4 or PCI Express 4.0, so no Gen 5 storage on this board. Each of these heat sinks uses a toolless system, which Gigabyte is calling Easy Latch Click. This allows you to easily remove the heat sinks by simply pressing on the latch and releasing the heat sink. When it comes to installing your M.2 drives, you have Gigabyte's Easy Latch Plus, which essentially is the same thing. This is the best system that I've seen to date for removing M.2 heatsinks and installing your drives. When it comes to expansion slots, you have a single PCI Express 5.0 x16 slot and 2 PCI Express 4.0 x16 slots, which are X4 electrical. The top slot features Gigabyte's ultra durable PCIe armor, which is a seamless piece of metal that's screwed into a dedicated backplate. This top slot also features their PCIe Easy Latch system, which essentially is a small tab that sits above your normal PCIe release latch. It's much easier to access, especially if you have a graphics card installed. Moving on to the rear I/O, we have an integrated I/O shield that's just black and has the AORUS logo on it. When it comes to our ports and connections, we have 4 USB 2.0 ports, WIFI7 antenna connections, 2 USB 3.2 Gen 2 ports, DisplayPort, HDMI, a USB 3.2 Gen 2x2 Type-C ports, 3 USB 3.2 Gen 1 ports, 2.5 gig LAN, and your audio connections. When it comes to these new motherboards from Gigabyte, they're really centering them all around user experience, and I really like that. Again, the 14th gen processors from Intel are just a refresh, so there's not a whole lot of stuff going on there. So having a better user experience is definitely awesome. So with this, again, you have those systems that make it extremely easy to remove those M.2 heatsinks and install your drives. It is the easiest system that I've ever used. Of course, you have the latch here on your PCI Express slot, which means it's a lot easier to access, especially with this larger M.2 heatsink. And then once you have a card in there, again, it just makes that user experience so much easier. Now, I didn't talk about it in this video, but they've also revamped their entire BIOS. It's a lot more user-friendly. We actually have an entire dedicated video on the BIOS of this board if you want to check it out, but they've completely redone that. They've also redone their motherboard software as well, so I think it's a lot better. It's a much needed upgrade, so you have all that as well. Now, when it comes to being a Z790 motherboard, this board is going to have pretty much everything that you want. The only thing that I would say that it is missing is you're not getting Gen 5 storage. So there's 4 M.2 slots on this board. They are only Gen 4, which is going to be okay for a lot of people. But if you did want Gen 5 storage, this is not going to be the board for you. You're also going to get USB 3.2 Gen 2x2. And the one thing I really like that Gigabyte has done is that you're going to get it on the rear I/O. I really like that because a lot of cases don't support Gen 2x2 with their internal header. So it's just nice to have it on the rear I/O. Definitely like that as well. This board looks excellent. Didn't have any issues with, overclocking or running any benchmarks or anything like that. It flew through everything, no problem. So we'll have all of our testing and everything like that in our full written review on ThinkComputers.org, so definitely check that out. We'll also have a link below where you can go ahead and pick this board up if you are interested. Now, if you have any questions about this board, definitely leave it in the comment section below. And if you enjoyed this video, I would appreciate it if you hit the thumbs up. We'll see you guys in the next video.